These trains entered service in 2019 and were withdrawn after only 4 years. Fast forward to 2026 and they finally re-entered service with Chiltern Railways on their flagship route between Birmingham and London, the UK's two largest cities. I took a ride on these new Mk5 Explorer sets during their first week in passenger service, and you'll be coming along too as we see the good, the bad and the ugly of their reintroduction. Now join me as the journey continues. Chiltern Railways stations are known for being quite retro and historic, and Birmingham Moor Street, where we start today's journey, is no exception to this. One of Birmingham's three main railway stations, it was originally opened in 1909 as part of the original Great Western Railway, and nowadays acts as one of Chiltern's principal stations on its main Birmingham to London corridor, located within close proximity of Birmingham's New Street station and the Bullring shopping centre. Of course, it's not just the Grade 2 listed building outside that's stuck in the past, but the inside too, which I honestly love. There are also several plaques by the coffee shop here depicting the station's history, as well as awards it's won over the years for its preservation efforts. The design does make some of the modern amenities such as the ticket machines on the WH Smith look a bit out of place, but at least the ticket office still fits with the rest of the theme here. We can also see a banner highlighting Chiltern's latest Fleet Edition, which is what we're here to try today. And on that note, we'll be catching the 1345 to London Marylebone today, departing from platform 3. As with most UK railway stations, there are ticket barriers before the platforms, with which access is granted by scanning my e-ticket. Moor Street has 4 platforms. The 2 through platforms are primarily used by West Midlands Railway on their services along the Snow Hill lines from Stratford upon Avon and Dorwich to Worcester and Great Malvern using Class 172 Turbostar diesel multiple units. Chiltern also uses these platforms on their limited extensions to Birmingham Snow Hill and Stourbridge Junction, but most of them use the terminating platforms 3 and 4, which were rebuilt and reopened in 2010 to better accommodate Chiltern services. Our new Chiltern Railways Explorer set is already waiting for us ready to return to London. At the rear of the set is a 100 mph Class 68 diesel locomotive built by Vossloh and later Stadler in Valencia between 2013 and 2017, whilst leading is a set of 5 125 mph Mark 5A carriages built by Spanish manufacturer CAF between 2017 and 2018, both wearing the stunning new Chiltern livery. The elephant in the room is that these trains are the former TransPennine Express Nova 3 sets that entered service with them in 2019 for use on long-distance services in the north of England after several delays. Due to a backlog in driver training caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, only 4 of the 13 sets built were used daily by 2022, making them one of the UK's most underused rolling stock, and following numerous faults including cracks found on the sets, TransPennine Express withdrew them in December 2023. Following several years in storage, Chiltern leased all 13 sets in late 2025 for use on their core Birmingham to London route, initially replacing their previous Class 68 and Mark 3 loco hauled stock, the latter approaching 50 years old and the end of their useful lives. One Explorer set is currently used on a weekdays only basis ahead of the full fleet's rollout by the end of the year. The former TransPennine Express Class 68s leased by Chiltern are modified to work with the Mark 5A stock, and upon being reintroduced by Chiltern were not only changed to be powered by hydro-treated vegetable oil to reduce emissions, but also fitted with stop-start technology to reduce the loud noises emitted by the trains while sitting idle, a frequent complaint by local residents. These sets also retain their first-class carriage, only available as an onboard upgrade for now, which is where we'll be sitting today. The Mark 5As don't offer level boarding, with ramps instead being used for the wheelchair users both on the train and at stations. For those who travelled on these sets with TransPennine Express, first class hasn't changed much. This is still in a 2x1 configuration with the operator's original maquette design, but with Chiltern Railways head cushions. One seems to be missing, which I'll come back to later as there's a reason for it. The layout is mostly table seats, but there are a few airline seats too. Seat reservations aren't available, so it's a free-for-all, and I started off with this one here. We depart Birmingham Moor Street on time at 13:45. So far so good. As we leave Moor Street, keep an eye out on the left to see the progress on the Acton to Aston shuttle, HS2, which is expected to open in the coming years. As we work our way out of the suburbs of Birmingham, we pass West Midlands Railways Tyseley depot, where the operator's diesel fleet is maintained. Also seen is a Class 196 in Chiltern Railways livery, 4 of which will be used by the operator on the East-West rail line between Oxford and Milton Keynes once it eventually opens later this year. Just over 10 minutes later, we arrive into Solihull, a market town which lies just outside of Birmingham. To the right, we can see a Class 168 pair entering the station. These form the backbone of Chiltern's main line and local services across their network, often coupled as pairs to form between 5 and 8 carriages. Anyway, as we head off, let's now take a look at the interior. Personally, I think the first class seats themselves aren't actually too bad. The padding's fairly okay and the seat ergonomics and winged headrest are decent. The real clincher for me though was the headrest cushion, which is definitely much harder than the ones TransPennine Express used. I can see why one was on the floor earlier. The manual recline on the seats is nothing special, but it's operated using this button here and sliding yourself forwards and backwards. Legroom on the other hand is fantastic, with plenty of space to stretch out and relax thanks to the generous seat pitch. At each seat, you'll find a standard UK power and a USB-A socket, which is found below the armrest closest to the window side, these being foldable of course. As mentioned earlier, there are currently no reservations in place with Chiltern, so that electronic displays are unused, with there being card holders at the top of the seats in case this goes down. The only reading lights, if you can even call them that, are at the many table seats, whilst draw-down window blinds are available to block out the view if you wish. Strange that there aren't any coat hooks here though. Okay, I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say this is the best first class ever, but it does the job I guess. Definitely a downgrade to the Mark 3s in terms of comfort, but still better than sitting in standard, which I'll come back to shortly. As we approach our next stop of Dorwich, it was here where the train manager came to me so I could pay for my £20 upgrade to first class. Those of you who travelled on the Chiltern Silver sets these are replacing pre-pandemic may remember the business zone offering available for a £10 to £25 upgrade depending on the time of travel, which was quietly dropped when the pandemic became serious. Well, this is no different, and as such is merely a quiet place to relax or work with extra space. Many passengers were caught off guard by this, and whilst some paid the fee, most moved to standard class, and we'll see the effects of this later. Free Wi-Fi is available on the Explorer sets, and this worked pretty well to a degree, though whilst I was waiting for emails to come through when doing some work, this did seem to lag, which isn't great given this is marketed as an ideal place to work whilst travelling. Between Warwick Parkway and Leamington Spa, our stops are again very close together. In between the two stations is the main station of the Warwickshire county town itself, and keep an eye out on the right after departure for the view of Warwick Castle in the background. Our next stop is Leamington Spa, officially known as Royal Leamington Spa, a key stop on Chiltern's route. It grew into a spa town in the 18th century following the popularisation of its water, which was, at the time, believed to have medicinal qualities. It was also deemed the best place to live in the Midlands in 2023 by the Sunday Times, though someone's going to have to verify that in the comments below as I've never actually visited. Like most railway lines in Britain, the Chiltern Main Line uses rather outdated infrastructure for much of its route, and annoyingly not a single portion of the route is electrified. Consequently, the track quality is rather poor, and the stretch of track here to Banbury is where the ride quality of the Mk5s is particularly terrible. This was an issue I picked up when the Mk5s were at TransPennine Express, as they don't ride well at higher speeds, and whilst the Mk3s weren't necessarily on par with Chiltern's DMU fleet in this regard, they're certainly better than the Mk5s by a long shot. Let's now have a quick walkthrough of the rest of the train. It's worth noting that a fire broke out on the West Coast Main Line the day I travelled, so it was a lot busier than it otherwise normally would be. Standard class on the Mk5s is in a typical 2x2 configuration, though with some solo seats here and there, which in contrast the first is mostly an airline style layout. Again, not much has changed since the sets were with TransPennine Express, and sadly that also means the terrible Fainza Sophia seats are also still here. The same type fitted to the Hitachi Class 800 series and Dutch commuter trains, which are solid as a rock. In Coach B, you'll find bike storage which is free to use, though Chiltern doesn't allow any bikes on board their services during morning and evening peak hours, so something to bear in mind. One peculiarity with these sets is the driving trailer at the front is allowed to carry passengers, being the UK's only loco-hauled fleet to do so following changes in regulations since the British Rail days. The previous Mk3s use a driving van trailer, which only carries bikes as opposed to any passengers. The only wheelchair space on board is in first class, which as with the airline seats, includes foldable table sections for ease of movement. A wheelchair accessible toilet accompanies this, which, minus a few pieces of toilet paper on the floor, was clean and in working order. Standard toilets are available throughout the rest of the train and were again clean and functional despite toilet paper being on the floor. Luggage storage is available using the overhead racks and the racks next to the vestibules for larger items, as well as in between the seats where possible. Our next major stop is Banbury, an interchange for cross-country services to the north and southwest of England, as well as limited GWR services to Oxford, Reading and Paddington. Crew changes also regularly happen here owing to most Chiltern services being driver only operated between here and London, though as with the previous Mk3 Silver sets, the Explorer sets are operated by a guard throughout the entire journey. Just south of the station is Banbury Depot. Chiltern conduct light maintenance of their fleet here, and another Explorer set can be seen preparing for a crew training run ahead of the fleet's eventual full rollout. We're now arriving into our final stop of Bicester North, where you can alight for Bicester Village if you fancy a bit of shopping. A refurbished Class 168 can also be seen arriving heading to Birmingham, and I'll of course have a video out on this at some point soon on the channel, so stay tuned. Which brings me on to another key question. What are the rest of the Explorer fleet going to be used for, given Chiltern only has 4 Mk3 sets that need to be replaced? The eventual introduction of the remainder of the fleet will allow most London to Birmingham services to be run as loco-hauled sets, allowing for an internal cascade within Chiltern's fleet. The Class 168 fleet will then be reallocated to routes such as London to Oxford, with the Class 165 fleet being focused on shorter regional and suburban routes until their eventual replacement in a few years. It's also rumoured that the 168s could be used on the East-West Rail route to allow the Class 196s to return to West Midlands Railway, part of the route seen below alongside the Chiltern Main Line link towards Oxford. The 50-mile section of the Chiltern Main Line we're on now was upgraded in the 2010s to allow for 100 mph running along the route, part of this resulting in infrastructure improvements as well, which is noticeable, especially with these trains. I still think the ride quality isn't that good, but it's still an improvement to the previous part of the line between Birmingham and Banbury. Still, we can enjoy the scenery of the Buckinghamshire countryside as we continue towards London. We're now entering the Greater London area and can see further HS2 works just before passing West Ruislip as we start running alongside the London Underground lines into central London, which means it's time to reflect. I can't honestly say these trains are an upgrade for Chiltern from a comfort perspective. The seats, ride quality and onboard ambience are much worse than the silver sets and Class 168s they'll be replacing, but from a capacity perspective, their reintroduction is a good thing. Chiltern is one of many operators in the UK suffering from rolling stock capacity issues, and given some of the Mk5s never even saw one run in passenger service, this is a much better solution than seeing them rot in storage in the long term. Even passing Chiltern's Wembley depot, it's clear the Mk3s are past their best, so their reintroduction is ideal for addressing both this and capacity constraints once the full rollout is complete. I booked this trip on the day, and excluding my first class upgrade, I paid £26.55 for a super off-peak single, which includes a third off with my Railcard discount. I do wish something was included in first class like a complimentary drink to make it better value for money, but otherwise I think it's fair when compared to the likes of Avanti when booking their equivalent standard premium. Normally it's a lot quieter too.
Station is London Marylebone, where the train will terminate. All change please. Please mind the gap between the train and the platform when leaving the train.
We're now entering the tunnels into London Marylebone, where we arrived just a minute late. Now you've heard from me, I want to hear from you. What do you think of the Chiltern Explorer sets? Are you glad to see them back in service, and have you had a chance to try them yet? Let me know in the comments. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like and share it if you did to aid the channel's growth, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more content such as this weekly. Marylebone Station is arguably the most retro of Chiltern stations given the remnants of the pre-privatisation days, and what's more is that I'll be getting off Britain's newest train onto its oldest to continue my day. Thanks so much for coming with me on this trip, and I look forward to bringing you with me on my next one.